Quote, "The world owes you nothing. It was here first." I believe perhaps we went over this quote already, but Mark Twain saying that the world is a place that has always existed here and it's not going anywhere. Just stay present, live the day, and just know that you don't have to rule over it, nor do you have to know everything about it. Why don't you start following in its footsteps as you ought to do as an inhabitant of this world? Quote, "If you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything." A quote by Mark Twain. Perhaps we went over this one too, I'm not sure. But saying that if you tell the truth, you know the truth, you don't have to remember anything because now you have this reasoning behind your knowledge. This knowledge and understanding of that knowledge gave you that reasoning. It gave you that common sense. So you can apply common sense. You can apply that reasoning to anything now because you have that ability to think like that. It's a practice. It's a skill of thinking, of being able to open the mind to an extent and not become too imbalanced in either left or right brain, but to have a more center control of what is right and what is wrong and understanding the different perspectives and being able to put yourself in the shoes of the many. Quote, "Wisdom is the reward you get for a lifetime of listening when you would rather have talked." A quote by Mark Twain. Wisdom is the reward you get. So the action is the reward you get from a lifetime of listening, right? If you listen to the world around you, listen to what must be done, you listen that there's all these problems, it's going to start prompting you to action. It's going to start prompting you to, okay, maybe this should happen, or what if this should happen? And what about this? And you start asking questions, and you realize there's voids, there's gaps, areas that you can fulfill as a human being with power that you can choose to obtain and further obtain. So, by listening, right? I said this when I was a child too. I wasn't the most outgoing child, I wasn't the most talkative, perhaps, very shy, basically, and wouldn't even dance on a dance floor. Just kept very listening and very observant of everything around me, kept asking questions. And eventually I kept asking questions to the point where I started to awaken to everything going on, to where then it only made sense I can start creating action thereafter because of all the observations I've made that many others missed because they too quickly went to action, which is why they got hurt from experience rather than awareness first. And so I often say this when it comes to relationships too. I know, me giving relationship advice, but I do it just out of, again, using my common sense and reasoning. Having that can achieve you the knowledge to anything. Mark my words. But that allows you, it's a skill of thinking, practice. It takes to attain that, and then you are able to think different ways. Now, my words are still sometimes hard to get around to people and so forth, especially since I'm a poet and realize there's different ways of speaking English. And perhaps English language is not always the best, being that it came out of too many different languages, and they're pushing for that to be the more universal language. And I encourage people to translate this, by the way, so we can get to more people. That would be amazing. Talk about creativity and art. That would be amazing. Talk about you being the leader more. But, I'll give you kudos. But seriously. So, I was observant and then I started taking action. That was what I was talking about. And it is a skill to use common sense. And yes, you can give relationship advice, but listen. You have to listen. You have to be aware. You can't just tell people what to do. It doesn't work like that. You ask a lot of questions. Everything that matters on questions, because whatever you say, you have to be very careful with. But you can have fun with it. It can be sort of an investigative work. Look at it as something like solving a puzzle. Now perhaps you don't like to learn that way, you like to learn other ways, that's perfectly fine, but I'm sure that you can combine different ways of learning so you can become your best self, so you can become and have the most optimal brain when confronted with different actions coming your way, right? Because it's actions that we respond to before we commit actions of our own. So saying a lifetime of listening when you have rather have talked, not chalking just yet, because you realize that wisdom is going to come from listening, not talking. And this goes back again to that quote of Voltaire that says that, the one who talks and doesn't listen is a fool. The one who talks or points the finger elsewhere and not pointing at themselves is a fool. Quote, nature knows no indecencies, man invents them. A quote by Mark Twain, talking how nature has this perfect blueprint for humanity, essentially. No indecencies, but that man invents them, right? You think man-made medicine, man-made foods. First of all, man-made foods we know is horrendous, and that alone is very bad. And then we want to say man's law is okay, and then we want to say man's medicine is okay, even though we're starting to see that man's medicine is horrendous as well. So it's just a matter of time then till people start realizing that man's law is also a horror within this life. Because all such three examples is examples of man trying to be God, man trying to rule over nature. So if nature has no indecencies and man is ruling over nature, then we're trying to create indecencies. We're trying to create a world that isn't as real as it's supposed to be. And then I'm attacked saying I'm not living in the real world. I live in a bubble to those who are stuck in this system. Are you serious? Are you serious? Because perhaps it is that you're stuck in the man's world, and which is why you think it's so real, because everybody is deceived and believing it, but that does not make it objectively right? And do you pay any attention to what nature is telling you instead of the news, instead of the media, instead of the history books? Do you pay any attention to it? Because many of these guys have, and guess what? They ended up in the history books because they actually did something. Thank you for watching this video. Feel free to subscribe, like, and do whatever you wish. It's up to you. You are free in this life, and if you want to know how to change the world truly, please, I encourage you to check out my website, Endrulat. It's here for all of us, actually. It's not my website. It is my website, but it isn't. It's here for us all. We're all messengers. We're all fellow human beings. Let's change the world truly, and we can do it with Endrulat. Nature's the answer.